This is All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. Listeners, before we begin, I'd like to let you know that this conversation will deal with the sexual abuse of minors. If at any time you need support, please call the National Sexual Assault Hotline. That number is 1-800-656-4673. That's 1-800-656-HOPE. They're open 24 hours a day. In the novel from T. Kira Madden, the three different women grapple with the aftermath of childhood sexual abuse. There's Birdie, who was abused by a man named Calvin when she was only 9. Now Calvin is out of prison and emailing her. Birdie decides to head to the remote Widbey Island and assume a fake identity to get far away from him. Then there's Lindsay, who shares her story on a reality TV show. Lindsay writes a memoir about her experiences, a memoir that includes portions about Birdie. And then there's Mary Beth, the abuser's mother. She loves her son, despite what he has done. Her world is turned upside down when she learns Calvin has been killed. The novel follows each of these women as they grapple with the aftermath of Calvin's murder, and as they reckon with the media landscape that loves to commodify women's trauma. The book is titled Widbey. It's the debut novel from T. Kira Madden, who is also the author of the memoir, Long Live the Tribe of Fatherless Girls, where she writes candidly about her own experiences with sexual abuse. Widbey was published yesterday, and T. Kira Madden is here with us today. It is nice to meet you.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Allison.
Let's start with the title. Widbey Island is off the coast of Washington State. You lived on Widbey Island before?
I've never lived on Widbey Island, but I have visited maybe a dozen times in the past decade.
What did you want to catch about the island, about being on an island?
Well, it's such a lush, beautiful place. So I did want to capture, details in the natural world, the way people speak there, but also the metaphorical properties of an island. I started this book just after arriving on Widbey for the very first time in early 2017 when I was battling the person who had abused me as a child in court. I was taking this ferry back and forth and kind of moving between these two shorelines, that of Florida, where I grew up, and that of Widbey Island, where I had this fantasy that maybe being there alone at a writing residency, I could arrive at something new, a new version of myself, kind of split from this past that I was battling in court. I met a stranger on that ferry boat, and this is a true story, which is where the novel of Widbey begins before it departs into fiction. That stranger asked why I was crying on the boat, and I told him what I was doing in court, and he said, "Would you like me to kill him for you?" No one would know we ever met. I distanced myself from that stranger as soon as possible. But when I arrived on the island, I was kind of haunted by that conversation and this feeling of remoteness and being alone in the woods, feeling watched by the animals, the wildlife there, and kind of throttled back into a past. So the novel began there, and I wanted to explore that place and what it means to feel like you might start over.
And that is where the novel begins, with you meeting this man, with Birdie meeting this man.
Yes.
But before we even get to that, at the beginning of the book, you write, "Dear reader, if you would like the opportunity to review a content warning before reading, please see page 367. And there in the back, you include a warning that there'll be descriptions of child abuse in the book. First of all, why did you want to add that content warning right up front?
I always want a reader to feel that I, as a narrator, that I, as an author, I care about them. It's an experience for a reader, right? When I'm writing for myself, I'm writing for myself. But once a book is published, and that was something I wrote after I knew the book would be shared with the world and therefore a dialogue, I want a reader to feel that I care about them. If I'm going to render scenes of violence and especially child sex abuse, I want to do so with care, without graphic, superfluous detail, and that I'm writing in solidarity with survivors of abuse. I am a survivor, and I'm also a teacher. And so my students honestly teach me so much about how they want to handle content warnings. Some people want to engage with it. Some people want to go in fresh and not know anything. And so that's why I chose to make that content note, from me, an optional page that one could flip to if they wanted to engage.
The novel is set in 2013, before the Me Too movement really was in effect. Why did you want to set this before Me Too?
I wanted to explore that moment just before, and also just before the moment Serial really came.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Oh, that's
it's
interesting.
just before. There is a podcaster in this book who's looking to make a series about Calvin's murder and about these victims. And I was thinking about that in terms of like the timeline of Serial, which some forget is really kind of the boom of true crime in media and podcasting specifically. I knew after a few drafts and years writing this book that it was too simple for there to be one single boogeyman, and that being the abuser in this story. Instead, I wanted to take the time to really look at the greater systems, the systems of the carceral system, the criminal justice system, and also the role of media in commodifying pain, commodifying suffering, and especially women's suffering in stories.
My guest is T. Kira Madden. We are discussing her new novel, Widbey, which tells the story of two women who were sexually abused as children by the same man, and the story of that man's mother. It's out now. Birdie, she's going to Widbey Island to live under a fake name. In the novel, we learn that her abuse happened when she was 9. And Lindsay's abuse began when she was 13. And she draws a big distinction between these two ages. Why does Birdie want to draw that line of differences between their experiences?
It was important for me that none of the characters in Widbey really be so-called likable narrators or a perfect victim, right? And so I wanted to investigate not only their suffering, but also the barbs that they kind of throw at each other, the ways in which the system, which has its own hierarchies of victimhood and survivorhood, where some people are considered credible witnesses depending on their proximity to whiteness or to power or to wealth. This can kind of change someone in terms of their psyche, in terms of, why don't they believe me? And so I wanted to investigate that hierarchy, not only within the system, but within these survivors themselves and their psyches, and the ways that being believed or not believed in court or dismissed in court has changed how much they want to prove their suffering, how much they want to prove it to the world if it wasn't proven by a court system or a jury. So Birdie and Lindsay both have things to say about the other. Both of them want to kind of be believed. Ultimately, I think so many of us in the world, not only in this book, we want our suffering to be seen and believed sometimes, and to be seen not only for the veneer that we move through the world with of being survived or being healed, but what we've endured.
We first hear from the other survivor, Lindsay, not through her perspective, but through her excerpts from her memoir. Why did you want to introduce her that way?
Well, I published a memoir which does touch on my history of child sex abuse and other, growing up with two parents who are addicts and lots of difficult kind of traumatic stuff, as some might say. And at the same time, I was going to court dealing with this and beginning the first pages of Widbey. I'm also showing up to market and Smile and like build press packages about a memoir about suffering. And it was also very strange of how do I package this book about trauma? How do I talk about it in a way that ultimately makes me maybe believable or likable? One wants to be a believable or likable narrator on the page the same way one wants to be believed on the stand. I was a federal Jane Doe. My case went all the way to trial, and I had to write a victim impact statement. And I felt there were so many similarities of just wanting to be believed, wanting my story to be valid, wanting to make myself a likable narrator.
And Mary Beth is Calvin's mother, and we first meet her when she learns that her son has been killed. When did you know you wanted the abuser's mother to be a big part of this story?
That's a great question. I'm always a little bewildered and perplexed by the loved ones, the family, the friends, the parents who continue showing up for people who have caused great harm, who, the evidence is presented before them and they can still stand in trial or court and say, I believe him or I believe this person. They are not capable of what you're accusing them of. And so, as, again, a Jane Doe who I've seen this, and I've also seen this in working in correctional facilities as a teacher and in reentry, I've seen these people continue to show up, sometimes enabling that abuser. And I like to write into questions. My great big question with that was always, what does that love look like? Or what does that degree of denial look like? How deep does it go? How potent can denial really be for a parent? My first book was largely about loving parents despite making some bad decisions and causing harm. And this book kind of feels like a reversal of that, in considering a parent who loves a son despite what he's done. She's not meant to be a likable person, but a dynamic person for us to, I hope, really sit with and think about what does it take to enable someone who's caused harm.
How do you feel about Mary Beth?
I think she's a very complicated character. I hope that a reader can hold some of her more despicable qualities by standing by her son, along with the fact that she has been disenfranchised by a system as the mother of an abuser when she herself has never abused anybody. I think looking at that kind of poverty, of disenfranchisement, and also the harms that she is causing by enabling an abuser can sit side by side. I like to write into that kind of complication for a reader to hold and feel a little disquieted by that.
So you have these three women to contend with as a reader, but we also have to contend with the legal system. You get into it quite a bit. You include a detail that at one point a colony of people who are sex offenders, who are on the sex offender registry in Miami, they are forced to live under a bridge. And in your novel, Calvin is one of them. Why did this happen in the first place, and when did you learn about it?
Yeah, this happened right after I graduated from high school. I was born in Miami and raised in South Florida. And so the Miami-Dade County is less than half a mile wide. And Ron Book created this legislation that asked any registered sex offenders to not be within 2,500 feet of children and where they can congregate. Because of the way Florida is and its narrowness, half a mile wide, this kind of caused these pockets and encampments to occur, meaning that those on the registry, and that means not only people who have abused children, like in this book, but also people who have urinated in public, people who have publicly streaked, to be designated to live in places like the Everglades or under the Julia Tuttle Causeway Bridge. That encampment is real. It was called Bookville, where people were leaving, their sentence or leaving jail, and they were taken directly to this bridge encampment. That's what their ID literally said.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so strange and bizarre that this community lived under a bridge as I was driving over to, spend the day in Miami. Almost too strange for fiction, but I wanted everything in terms of the legality and this legislation to be rooted in fact, for people to learn a little bit about what do we mean when we say we care about survivors or we care about the children. Is this something that will really help? What's the legislation where I live? I wanted readers to ask those questions.
I wanted to ask you about your writing process before you run out of time. You said in your own words that you're completely obsessive about writing. What does that look like?
I write all of my first drafts on the typewriter. I learned how to write on a typewriter when I was a child, and so that's still my process. It's not to be romantic. It's just the thunder of the keys and looking at the page and not having the distractions of a screen or the internet is how I get a book done.
You like the sound?
I like the sound.
That's interesting.
Yes, I work on an electric, a Selectric 2. Thank you, Philly typewriter. And I like the thunder of that sound. From there, I then transcribe all of those pages onto the computer, reading everything aloud. And every single page on the typewriter transcribes to 8 on the computer, 8 pages. So it takes a really long time. By reading aloud and transcribing every single moment of a book, it's an immediate full second draft by the time I get onto the computer. Otherwise, I think I might, get a little lazy or let something stay on the page when it doesn't belong there.
Oh, it's almost like editing.
Exactly.
Oh, that's so interesting.
It pushes me to edit every single word.
And you set up your desk in a very particular way. Will you share with us?
I like to decorate my desk depending on the project I'm working on so that when I, leave my day of teaching or caretaking or whatever I'm doing that day, I can kind of land at a space and a desk that has a very specific kind of lighting or smell, or I have driftwood from Widbey Island on my desk. That was there the whole time I worked on this book. I had models of banana slugs just to bring myself back to that island when I couldn't be there. Different kind of items from South Florida and gas stations and, anything that could bring me into the world of the book. I'm big on bulletin boards. I'm big on mood boards and kind of bringing in the energy and colors and smells to the desk so I can immerse myself into that project the way I hope a reader could immerse themselves in the book.
As you're immersing yourself in this project, how did you protect yourself and your health when writing this book about childhood abuse?
I'll never have a great answer for that because I haven't figured it out yet. Some days are just really hard. Some days were really, really difficult and I'd have to take a long walk. Other days, I let myself have breaks. I don't push myself through writing something if it feels deeply unhealthy. This book took 8.5 years for a reason. I think it took taking these long breaks, having a fantastic therapist, many walks and weeks and months that I took off to let the well fill back up when I felt emotionally depleted or I felt that I needed the story to come back to life within me. I tried to honor that and never push through or rush something.
There are likely survivors of childhood sexual abuse who will read your book. What experience do you hope they'll have?
I hope that other survivors can see themselves and appreciate the complexity of survivorship that I hope to render in this book. We're not all one thing. We don't have to be the most likable person or the most affable or public-facing person to be worthy of respect and to be believed of the thing that we have survived. So I hope this book presents a number of different ways that survivorship looks and that one could see themselves in that, however complicated or prickly or messy that could be.
The new novel is called Widbey. It's very good. It is by T. Kira Madden. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that is all of it. I'm Allison Stewart. I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate you. I will meet you back here next time.